Hi everyone, it's Sarah Todd. Welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's video, we're going to be chatting about my short film that I had created about 2 years ago and how it certainly struck a nerve in the non-disabled audience. So when I was in college, I was part of a leadership program, and that program granted students who were part of it a stipend to use towards a leadership project of some kind. So when I was 8 years old, I became disabled. I was paralyzed from the neck down, recovered a lot. I have partial use of my arms and hands, so I have partial paralysis in my arms and hands. And that means that my disability is a big part of my life. And that also means that when I was in college, I needed a decent amount of help from other people. And I was living on campus in the on-campus housing. For the first 2 years, I lived by myself. And for the third and fourth years, I lived with 3 roommates. The first 2 years living by myself, that was because of COVID, and it was very difficult for me to get the help that I needed because I was by myself. Then for third and fourth years, it was so much better having roommates because they were my friends for one thing, so that was fun. And then also they could help me with things when I needed it. The things I needed help with were pretty basic. It was stuff like doing ties on a top if there were ribbons on a top, buttoning or zipping clothes, but I usually didn't wear clothing that had buttons and zippers, so that was extremely rare. Occasionally putting my hair in a braid if I wanted it done, but I would usually just wear my hair down and brush it myself. Occasionally reaching something from a high cabinet, because I'm also very short. I'm only 5 feet tall. And maybe sometimes opening a jug of milk or a can or something like that. So pretty basic tasks and things that I could pretty easily spread amongst my 3 roommates and my friends who didn't even live with me every day. So there were actually some days where I'd be like, oh wow, I didn't even ask anybody for help today. So that was always very nice. So when I did ask somebody for help, it was usually just one small task, and I could spread it out amongst my roommates very well, and I made sure that I put a lot of thought into that. There was this one day, my senior year, senior spring, where I'd gone on spring break and I'd gone shopping during spring break, bought a new top that I really loved, brought it back to campus with me, was so excited to wear this top. But this top has ties that are on the shoulders, so they need to be tied for the top to stay on, otherwise it would just fall off. So I was able to get the top on to cover my back and chest, but it wasn't gonna stay on since the ties weren't tied. I had planned the night before that I was gonna wear this top because I was super excited to wear my new fit. And before I put the top on that morning, I went out and asked my roommate who was eating breakfast if I put this top on, if she would be able to tie the ties for me. And she said she was kind of rushing to eat her breakfast. So that was her way of saying that she couldn't do that task for me that morning. So I said, okay. And then I texted my other roommate who was there because my other roommate wasn't around. So there were only 2 roommates for me to ask. The other roommate I knew usually had her notifications off in the morning, so I didn't think she would see the text, but I knew that she was awake. But I tried texting her first, she didn't respond. Then I just decided I would put the top on and hold it up while I did the rest of my getting ready routine and just wait and see if she answered. That took me about 10-15 minutes and she still hadn't answered, so I decided I would knock on her door, which she knew I would do sometimes, and she never told me she had a problem with that, and I always made sure to not do that very often and to be respectful of that. So I knocked on her door and just asked if she was busy, if I could open the door. She said I could open the door. I asked if she could tie the top. She said yes, and she did the ties for me. And I told her what had happened with the other roommate, with her not being able to help. And she was like, oh, that's fine. And in that moment, it just really hit me that my roommates weren't going to understand how me not getting the help that I needed would affect me, but they were always going to think about it from their perspective because yeah, that's kind of obvious. They're in their shoes, they're not in my shoes. But I'd never really thought of that before, that they were not going to consider how me needing help with a task and then not knowing if I'll get that help and having somebody tell me that they can't help will affect me. So after she finished tying the ties on my top, I went and finished getting ready in the bathroom, and I just bawled while I was getting ready because it wasn't like either of my roommates had done anything wrong. They hadn't. But it just really hit me that these people who I live with, who are my friends, who know me very well, did not get it. Just that frustration and the exhaustion of always having to plan ahead, hoping somebody's going to be there to help you, not knowing if they'll be able to help you, not knowing how the interaction is going to go, always feeling guilty about it, so on and so forth. And it just so happens that the day this happened, I had already had a lunch planned with one of my really good friends to talk about what I might use my funding from this leadership program for, because she was also part of the program and we just wanted to brainstorm together. And while I was at lunch with her, I just decided to tell her this story from that morning because I was still thinking about it at lunch and it had just really affected me. And she said it sounded like this moment like really meant something for me. And if she were only watching me through social media, like didn't know me in person like she did, she wouldn't have known that this was something that I struggled with, that like I make my life seem super easy on social media. And so at the time, we have to think about like this was 2 years ago. So since then, I think I've definitely started talking more about the challenges of disability and given a more well-rounded perspective, but it was inspired by this. So 2 years ago at the time, like I definitely was not really talking about the struggles of disability on social media. I was really only talking about mostly the easy things. So she was right. And that really stuck with me, that she said that that's how she would view my life. Because I was like, wow, like that really means that people don't know what's going on in my life. And so she suggested that I use my funding for the leadership program to explore the complexities of my disability experience, like this story, more deeply. So that's how I got to this short film that I had created 2 years ago. I immediately got to planning and writing the vision out for my short film. And the whole purpose of it was really to shine light on the aspects of my disability experience that I felt like people didn't see. Because I was exploring a lot like in my head with invisibility and visibility. And I really had to fight to have my story be told the way that I wanted it to be told. I had started working with a videographer who was amazing, and he brought in another videographer who was also incredible. They both did a fabulous job on this short film. Highly recommend y'all go watch it on my channel if you haven't yet. It'll be good context for this video as well. But in talking to the younger videographer about my vision for the project, he told me that he kind of wanted to bring in the community aspect of my disability experience and kind of end the short film on a positive note. And that's when it hit me that I was gonna really have to work hard to get the videographers to understand my vision, because a lot of the time disability is represented in a very feel-good, inspirational way. And my story that I wanted to share here was not that at all. I wanted to talk about the really annoying, frustrating, exhausting parts of being disabled. So I explained that to the videographers that like, no, like I really want to dive into the challenges of my experience. Like, yes, I want to also talk about the positives and the amazing parts of my experience, but we've got to get into the challenges, because the whole inspiration for this short film is this story with the top. So we got to filming the short film. We filmed it all in 2 days. We got so much interview content. Like I sat down and did an interview with the videographers for a few hours. So we got so much content through that. And then we also got a lot of B-roll shots of me around campus, in my apartment. It really was so fun working on it, and it came together so well. And as the videographers were working on editing the short film, we had a lot of conversations about whether the scene that details the whole top incident should be included. The videographers thought that since it's kind of in the middle of the short film, and the short film is about 10 or 11 minutes, kind of takes people out of it, because it is kind of like a shift. Like it's in the middle, kind of a shift to this different topic, sort of pulls you into that story, and then you kind of have to get pulled back to the story that was started in the beginning. And so they thought people might get pulled out of it. And they also told me that people were going to see all the struggles that I'd been through with like figuring out how to attend college and how to do a lot of things for myself, and wonder why this moment with the top was more of a struggle for me than all those other things. And that was when I was like, okay, but that's one reason why it needs to be included, because the whole point is that me finding ways to adapt and do things on my own is not as difficult as getting others to be understanding of my disability and my access needs. Like relying on others is a way more difficult than me figuring out how to make things happen with my disability, like on my own. So that's one reason I felt like this scene really needed to be included. And then also that whole story was the inspiration for the whole project. So to me, it felt like it would be disingenuous to my story and like what I wanted to share if that piece wasn't included. So we opted to include it in the short film because they had created two versions where you could watch the short film without the scene and then also with the scene. And I watched both of them a few times. When I watched the first one where that scene isn't included, I'm left feeling like, wow, like this is such a feel-good story, how inspirational. She's really got it all figured out. Like this is great. And then if you watch the second one where that scene is included, you realize, yeah, I've worked through a lot of challenges. My life is amazing. I've done so many great things, but that it hasn't been easy and that there are difficult parts of being disabled. And it's important that we talk about those. So we proceed with leaving that scene in the short film, and we title it Pressing Buttons. Disability Goes Deeper Than What You See, which my videographers helped me come up with that title. And I love it so much because there's so many meanings to it, like pressing buttons. Okay, so that has to do with like me being a little bit like annoyed and frustrated, like my buttons were pressed. And it's also a metaphor because a lot of the work that I did while I was in college with my disability club had to do with the accessible door buttons being broken and doors being inaccessible to me as a disabled person. So I loved how there was that metaphor to it. And then also we did a lot with like a doors metaphor. So talked about like opening doors into my full story as a disabled person. So it was a really cool title with so much meaning to it. And then the subtitle with Disability Goes Deeper Than What You See, that really encapsulates all that this film is to me. That there is more to the disability experience than what typically meets an onlooker's eye. And that it's not people's fault that they don't know these things or don't see these things, but that I want them to. And so I was giving them a look into my experience as a disabled person. Overall, the film received incredible reception. I released it on my YouTube channel in July 2024 for Disability Pride Month. And I had so many lovely emails and texts from friends sent to me that I've saved to read again because they were just so kind. And I also have so many comments saved from followers that were just so kind. But there were some negative comments, and I want to talk about those because I have many thoughts about the things people said that were negative and why. And the main thing that's very interesting to me about the negative comments on the film is they were all about the scene with the top. There were not any negative comments about anything else in the short film. Literally, the only negative comments that I received were about that scene. So let's read a few of them. There were way more than I am going to share here, but I just want to share like the most interesting ones to discuss. This person says, people have the right to help you or not. Just be grateful for all those that do help you. So obviously this is about the scene with the top, and I feel like this is a very cold thing to say. It is definitely lacking empathy, no sense of community here from this person. But yeah, I mean, it is true that people have the right to help me or not, but I think what people often forget as society as a whole is that we do have an obligation to help those in our community just by like being polite, like doing things like holding doors for people. Like there is just like a sense of common courtesy and etiquette that human beings should have as part of a society. And those things should not change just because you might have a disabled person in your community. And in fact, those things should be practiced even more if you have disabled people as part of your community. So just a very cold way of thinking. This person says, your roommate isn't your caretaker and didn't sign up for that. Sure, it may be something quick, but I'm sure they didn't want to get locked into that responsibility of always having to help. So yeah, okay, it definitely is a complicated situation to be in when you're disabled and you need help from people who aren't paid to help you. But it's also complicated when you need help from somebody who is paid to help you, because a lot of the time they don't show up, or they're not nice, or they literally abuse you. With friends or roommates who aren't paid, I think these tasks are really just part of being friends with a disabled person. Obviously, if I needed help with like bathing or like major self-care items, that would not be appropriate and I would need a caregiver for that. That's not the case. And a lot of the things that I need help with are things that people who are non-disabled receive help with all the time, especially girls. Like girls love to do each other's hair, help with clothes. Like my roommates had literally helped each other zip dresses up before I'd seen them do it. And that's the same type of help that I needed. So this comment just really doesn't hold. Also, Also, my friends knew that I needed help before they decided to live with me. So it's not like they weren't aware of what I needed and the fact that I have a disability. This person wrote a long comment, said, when you said, quote, it's sad when people tell me no because then I'm left wondering what am I supposed to do, quote, your roommate's reaction maybe because she felt like you sounded as though you were entitled to her time, compounded by the fact you could just wear something else that doesn't need to be tied at the back. I roll. I can't even imagine how frustrating it must be to be in your position. Bingo. But saying such things could be pressuring your roommates into thinking that saying no is not an option because they will feel guilty if they do, which unless they are your paid carers is a bit unfair. Not mean to come across as super critical. They did though. Just trying to see both sides of the coin. No, you're only trying to see the non-disabled person's side of the coin. I work with a chap at work who is on the spectrum and I have to make a lot of allowances for the way that he is, including helping him with tasks, and I'm not paid any extra for doing so. So I can appreciate how it maybe can be a frustrating experience for everyone sometimes. So when they point out the part where I said it's sad when people tell me no because then I'm left wondering what am I supposed to do, that is what I said to the roommate who did help me tie my top, and she just laughed in response, and like it felt like she didn't really know what to say back. I did not say that to the roommate who said that she couldn't help me. I said to that roommate, like, okay, no worries. That's usually what I would do. I'd just be like, okay, I'll ask someone else, or okay, no worries, or thanks for letting me know, like any normal response like that. And then how I felt about whatever response I was given was always kept inside to myself. And that's kind of part of the problem is I think disabled people are expected to just like not feel any emotions about anything. And it's like, obviously I felt a lot of emotions and continue to feel a lot of emotions about needing help from other people, but I don't get to get those emotions out in any way other than if I'm talking about it with my counselor or if I am expressing those emotions through art, like my short film, or in my content creation. So that's why this short film was so groundbreaking for me, honestly, and really therapeutic, because it was a space for me to share my emotions surrounding this very complex topic that I just never get to talk about with anyone because nobody gets it except for my disabled friends pretty much. And even then, we all have different experiences. So I'm the only one who can truly get like my individual experience. I just wish there was more understanding from others. And so that's why I created the short film, because I think it's helpful for people who may end up finding themselves in a situation like my roommates did, where you're friends with somebody who needs help, you're living with somebody who needs help, kind of understand what that might be like for the person who needs the help and not just for you as the person who's helping. Also, when this person says that I could just wear a top that didn't need to be tied at the back, it wasn't at the back, it was on the shoulders. But that doesn't matter. It's not about the top. It's about all of the emotions surrounding it, like I've been saying. But even still, disabled people deserve access to freedom of self-expression, and that includes fashion. And I obviously try not to buy clothing that's inaccessible to me, but that is literally impossible because clothing is just so inaccessible. And this top was super cute. I wanted it. If a non-disabled woman gets to buy that same top and wear it, I deserve to be able to wear that same top when there are people who can help me tie the ties on that top, and it only takes literally 15 to 30 seconds to do that task. There's no reason that disabled people should be denied or deprived of pleasures in life that non-disabled people have access to just because non-disabled people don't want to help us have access to those things. Another point that I want to make about the reception that my short film received pertaining to the negative comments is I learned this term called diet disability from Ali Stroker, Tony Award winner, who's a wheelchair user. She's incredible. I love her. She told me about this term and she said it's when representation of disability is easily digestible for a non-disabled audience. And I was like, oh my gosh, I love that term so much because that's so often what we see. Diet disability, disability representation that is comforting to the non-disabled gaze. It doesn't make them question their biases or their way of thinking. It doesn't challenge the status quo. My short film was the opposite of diet disability. If I had not kept that scene in there, it would have been diet disability. Because like I said, when I watched it without the scene in there, it was a feel-good short film. But with that scene in there, it makes you think, it challenges the status quo, makes you question your biases, it makes you at least attempt to put yourself in the disabled person's shoes instead of just always thinking about things from the non-disabled person's perspective. And so I feel like that's precisely one major reason why that scene needed to be included. Disabled people are human, so we are going to have human emotions, and human emotions are complex. And I really feel like my short film did the complexity of my disabled experience justice. Thankfully, like I said, I did receive way more positive comments than negative comments, and I want to read you a few of them because they really show the impact that that one scene has on people who get it. So this one says, art comforts the disturbed and disturbs the comfortable. Your film is art. That one just made me really happy because I think it shows like exactly what Ali said about diet disability and why complex representation of disabled people and our emotions is so important. I love this one. This one says, when independence and freedom of self-expression is dependent on supports, people start to question its importance. It is integral to being human though. You deserve that top and to have access to it. Like, oh, my heart. They really understood the point of the film. People are all for freedom of self-expression, but the moment you rely on somebody else to achieve that, they're like, nah, not important. So I really love that I was able to challenge that notion in my short film. This person says, as a disabled person with a degenerative disability, that scene resonated so much with me. Seeing myself go from completely independent to relying on others has been harder than any other element of my disability. And it was so valuable to see it represented in such a powerful way. Like that comment alone makes including that scene worth it. This person wrote a series of comments. They said, I just watched the film and I think it definitely was necessary to keep that scene in because this is about you and your point of view and your experiences. If a non-disabled person is uncomfortable with that scene, then it's up to them to figure out why that is. You're not complaining about anyone or criticizing anyone. You're expressing frustration, always having to live around everyone else's schedules. Like, yes, they get it. Like, I was merely sharing my emotions and did that in a short film, a form of art. So that's in a very healthy and creative way. And this person got it. I absolutely love this message I got from a follower of mine. They said, this is so beautifully done to the point when I don't actually know what to say. I feel like one of your biggest strengths has always been your focus on how you allow yourself to feel joy and happiness around you and focus on your goals for the future while also acknowledging the ways your disability might affect your day-to-day life. This perfectly captures that feeling, and there's many parts in it that really resonate with me when I look at my own goals. I'm definitely going to be sharing with other people I know, especially some of my other friends who have disabilities or work with people who have disabilities, just because I think you perfectly accent the relationship that people with disabilities have to go through, whether they think deeply on it or not. That message literally made my day when I received it. That's why I saved it. And I love how they recognize that I show all the joys that I experience through disability and the challenges that I experience through disability, that it all goes together to create the complexity that is my human experience. Yeah, so almost 2 years later, I do have the comments turned off on my short film just because it is a very special project to me and I want it to stay that way. I don't want anybody to make me feel any differently about it. Maybe the comments will be turned back on at some point, but we'll see. I really do find it telling that a non-disabled audience gets so uncomfortable and combative when a disabled person like me opens up about the struggles I face relying on others. I feel like that says a lot. And I really want to normalize disabled people talking about things that non-disabled people aren't used to us talking about. I feel like that just really encompasses who I am and what my social media is all about, really. So I'm gonna keep doing that. And I hope that the right people get it and enjoy it, and that's really all that matters. Anyway, that's it for this video. Please do go watch my short film if you haven't already, and be sure to give this video a like and subscribe to the channel if you enjoyed this video. I will see you all at the next video, I hope, every Monday at 3 p.m. Eastern. Have a great day. Bye, everyone.